So this is about me, then 16, now 23, and my mom. My mom is usually the best mom I can imagine, but at this time my grandma, her mother, just died and we got a lot of frustration because I was always feeling sick. Stomach pain and some dizziness. This kept on going on and was getting worse. At one point I wasn't able to see for a while. Like, in the morning I would get out of bed, my sight went black and my head spun. In this state I was walking out of my room, along the hallway, down the stairs, another hallway, into the kitchen. When I was at the fridge opening the door I could see again. And my mother didn't believe me. School was horror at this time. My school had a lot of stairs and I was constantly tired, dizzy and so unconcentrated. Of course a tad sad and a lot of frustrated. She always used to believe me when I wasn't feeling good. One day I just couldn't anymore. I was so tired, sitting in our kitchen, and I just wanted back into my bed. So I asked my mom, begged her to stay home. Except for PI I had very good grades. Mom, so you're feeling sick again? This can't go on like this. Me, but Mom, it's not again. It's still. I feel really dizzy. Mom, you're always tired. I get you to the doctor. He will tell you how sick you really are. At this point I was so frustrated and just yelled back. Me, yeah. Please. Please take me to the doctor. Finally. I wanted to go for weeks. Mom, okay, get dressed. We are going right now. Then we know for sure you aren't sick. And #X200B. So we made our way to our doc and I can't remember everything he did, but he did a complete blood count. I hope that's the right translation. So the nurse handed me my results. There was an inflammatory value which standard was between 3 to 5, maximum was 8. Mine was 124. The doctor walked back in and told my mother, so please don't be shocked, I am writing your daughter a referral to the hospital. She has to immediately go there. My mom was shocked. Didn't say a word. As we got there, a nurse came rushing with a wheelchair, due to my dizziness, and I was hospitalized for over a week. My mom apologized and never ever didn't believe me again. I got a pretty juicy call today from an unpleasant person who tried to bully his way up the ladder. FA, my new federal agent friend me, customer service for a U.S. auto finance corp. Me, thank you for calling _, this is _, how may I help you? FA, hi, I'm a federal agent and I'm calling on behalf of one of your customers' accounts. They are concerned about a refund check that is possibly stolen. This is regarding a check you said has been cashed, but I reach out to your bank you guys use and they said it hasn't been cashed. I wish I were kidding, but that's how he started this call. I could immediately tell he was full of it. Of course we can't release any account info if they're not authorized on the account. Me, okay, well I can check and see for certain if it has been cashed. We can void it and reissue if needed, but this is a conversation we need to have with our client. FA, I don't think you're listening to me. This issue has been going on since December. The customer reached out to me to try and resolve this. We need to fix this now. Me, I understand the importance of the situation, but that doesn't change the fact that I can't discuss details of an account you're not on. FA, okay, connect me with your supervisor. We aren't required to bend immediately if somebody asks for a sup, and in this case a supervisor wouldn't even take his call because he's not on the account. Me, no sir, they won't speak with you as you are not an authorized member on the account. Who are you and where are you calling from? FA, I work for the Postal Services. I have a handwritten letter from the customer, connect me with your supervisor. And it all came crashing down. He repeated himself a few more times, making himself more upset each time, and finally hung up after vowing to get me fired. So if you get a call from a federal agent, tell him I said hi. This happened back when I was in high school. I was generally a pretty quiet, mellow kid in school. Teachers generally liked me, and I'd never be a disruptive one. One day at the start of my AP English class, I settled into my seat near the back of the classroom, but something was wrong. The back of my neck started to hurt. A lot. It had been gradually getting sorer throughout the day, but now it had quickly become agonizing. The rest of the class was still talking and getting settled in before class started, and the teacher, Mrs. O, was gradually getting more annoyed by it. She walked to the back of the classroom, asking for quiet the whole time, until she arrived by my desk, where I was starting to writhe with pain. She wasn't paying attention to me, though. She was focused on the noisy kids. I sort of meekly raised my hand and said, Mrs. O? Without looking at me, she slammed her hand on my desk, with a quiet I was taken aback again and figured maybe she didn't understand I was trying to sincerely get her attention, so I tried again, which just made her angrier. I said quiet. Now, this was normally a pretty chill teacher. I got along with her well, and she was generally well liked, including by me. The other students happened to just be particularly rowdy that day, which put her in the worst mood I've ever seen from her. So I meekly pulled my hand down and shut up. The class quickly got the message that she was serious, so they all shut up too. She went to the front of the room and the lesson started as normal. But in the meanwhile, my pain was getting worse. I was grabbing at my neck, sort of hunched over, unable to pay attention. A girl sitting next to me raised her hand and, I'm not exaggerating here, said, Mrs. O? I think Op is dying. I remember suddenly everyone in the class looked at me to see me contorted in my desk, and the teacher came back over in a hurry. I think I need the nurse or something. She frantically asked why I didn't say anything earlier. You told me to be quiet. To this day, I've never seen someone look as horrified and guilt-stricken. Ultimately, the nurse sent for EMTs and I was taken to the ER. It turns out that there had been a meningitis outbreak recently, and one of the main symptoms is a stiff sore neck. The guys had face shields on and everything. I was wheeled out of the high school nurse's office in a gurney. It was a whole thing. I tested negative ultimately, and was diagnosed with just a muscle strain. But the teacher did come to the hospital to say hi and apologize. I never really held it against her. She still is one of my favorite teachers, and I hope she's learned to be just a little more conscientious. This happened several years ago when I was in elementary school. I was out of school for a couple of weeks because of chickenpox. When I started to feel better, I started to try to catch up with my schoolwork. I didn't use my desk, so everything was laid out on my floor. My parents had just rescued a pregnant greyhound. She got into my room and went into labor, on top of my homework. The next day, I told my teacher what had happened and asked if I could have a little more time to redo it. She replied saying that she would believe it when she saw it. I shrugged and said okay. My parents put said homework into Ziploc bags for me to give her. I turned in my homework as required. She threw it away and gave me the extension. I have roommates who texted me that they want to live alone and want me out and they are willing to pay the full rent amount. Then started to harass me when I complain. They say if you don't want your stuff to be touched or you're uncomfortable then leave. So when I had enough I started to look for other places. I found one for the month of June. I gave out my notice to the landlord few days ago. Then they complained about me not giving a 1-month notice to them. I already told my landlord that since they are not bringing someone else to live instead of me, do I have to give my 1-month notice? She said no, that's fine. But now they are telling me to pay the rent for June even though I'm not going to be there. I really don't know what is the next move to do. Any advice? Yesterday I went to a particularly large store chain that starts with a W. I needed some groceries and I had just gotten paid. I had just worked out and I went straight to the store because I didn't want to be there too long. I had a long day at work and with an hour-long workout under my belt now too, so I was tired. I was looking at some tablets in the electronics section. I'm in the market for one, but I'm not really sure what to buy. I was doing mostly just some research. I did happen to be standing next to a cart full of boxes, the ones that the employees tote around. It seemed to have been abandoned by the employee that was supposed to be working on it, probably because they got busy. I was looking at the specs for some tablets when an old man comes up to me and says, I need a key to get one of the controllers. I know what he wants. He thinks that I can somehow get a key to open one of the locked glass displays and get some kind of gaming controller. I don't work here, sir. I responded. Old man, well, can't you get me someone that can get the key for me? Me, no. Old man, do you not work here? I had to stop myself from glancing down at my clothes. I didn't want to appear rude. To paint the picture for you, I'm a girl who's got super short hair, almost boy cut, and I was wearing baggy Star Wars sweatpants, a Voltron t-shirt, and my workout shoes. I didn't even remotely look like I worked there. Me, no, but the help desk is right over there. I point to the help desk with an employee behind the counter. They are preoccupied at the moment, but if the man waits they'll help him. I went back to reviewing the specs. Then continued to get my groceries. I never saw him again, thankfully. There was no person chasing me around the store demanding that I be fired or reprimanded. He probably thought that I worked there solely because I was standing next to a cart full of boxes. I don't think he realized what I was wearing until after our conversation. So this happened many years ago when I was about 14. My father had a camper van and we would go away to different caravan parks most weekends during the good months of the year. One weekend we went to a caravan park that a friend of my father was going to also. We pitched up opposite each other and it was business as usual. On Saturday my father and his friend who we will call John went to the nearest village and into the pub. As it was good weather we sat in the beer garden at the rear of the pub on a picnic-style table. Also, seeing as it was a village, there was no one around the pub but ourselves. Somehow me and John wound up sitting beside each other with my father opposite. John has been smoking rollies while we were there, casually rolling them on the table part of the table. Then I noticed him rolling one on the seat part between him and myself, so wondering what he was doing I glanced down to see he was now rolling a spliff, at which point he poked me hard in the ribs and said, "You mind your own business and don't look at what I am doing here." Time passed, spliffs were smoked and eventually it was time to leave. As everyone stood up from the table I noticed John drop a large piece of hash wrapped in tinfoil out of his pocket. What did I do? I minded my own business. We went back to the camper vans, and after maybe an hour I noticed John walking around looking under the chairs and on the floor for something. So I asked my father what he was looking for and he said John has lost his hash. To which I replied that must be what he dropped in the pub then. My father went and told John the first saw him drop it in the pub. John calls me out and asks why didn't I tell him? And I replied, you said to mind my own business, and so I did. He went back to the pub but couldn't find it, and when he returned he was so angry he packed up his things and left in his camper van. Be careful what words you choose to use. TL, Dr. Father's friend told me to mind my own business, and when I saw him drop his drugs I did just that. So this happened to me a couple years ago when I was still at this specific store. I saw these two guys, obviously in need of some guidance by the look of confusion on their faces, near the front of the store. As I approached and engaged with them, it became clear that these men knew no English and unfortunately, I do not know Mandarin, so we had to find other ways to communicate. Characters. Me G1, Guy 1. Me, hi. Welcome to my store. Is there anything I can help you find today? G1 shows me a picture on his phone of a pregnant woman in what appears to be a lead tarp, like at the dentist's. Me, oh. Okay, let me show you our maternity section. After I lead him over to maternity and he didn't see what he was looking for, he decided to try a new form of communication, Google Translate. I watched him type something away onto his phone before Siri called out, I am looking for a radiation suit. I don't know about you, but that tends to make the eyes widen a bit when I'm from. I laughed and shook my head, and after his phone screamed radiation suit at me a few more times, I thought maybe he means solar radiation and took him to look at hats and kimonos. But no. After looking at the picture again, I see it has a phone with microwaves going toward the pregnant lady's belly and realize he needs something for technology radiation. I tell him we don't sell them and he continues his quest elsewhere. Personally, I'm amazed at his ability to get through an entire town in the US without any English or Spanish, or anyone helping him who knows English or Spanish. I hope you found what you wanted. You certainly earned it. Super short one, but I thought it was amusing enough to share. For background, I work 2 part-time jobs, at a well-known bank in the morning, and an office supplies retailer in the afternoon/evening. My uniform has the bank's logo on every item of clothing, so bank tie, bank shirt, bank pants, bank belt, even bank socks. Today I was walking into the store for my second job, still in my banking uniform which looks nothing like the polo shirts worn by the retail staff there, and was approached by a lady who wanted some printing, but as she opened her mouth to ask immediately saw me in bank attire and moved to ask someone else. Seeing this, I made a remark to one of my colleagues that even when I'm not in retail uniform I still have people almost asking for help. Went to walk towards the break room to get changed, no issue. This is when another customer, who was definitely outside of earshot, approaches me, but this guy actually looks at me and asks, mate, are these the only printers you guys stock at the moment? I was actually at a loss for words as to how this person had concluded I was the right person to ask. Of course I looked down at my shirt embroidered with the bank logo, looked back up at him and he's still expectantly looking at me for an answer, and I just cave and take the couple of minutes to give him a hand before getting changed and clocking on. DL, drive, guy sees me in a business suit with bank logo, concludes I must work at an office retailer that wears crappy polo shirts, is actually correct. I used a set of handcuffs as a prop for a movie, and we lost the keys pretty fast, didn't matter to us. Earlier today I was packing stuff away, and my housemate, Mr. P, passes by and we have too many drinks. As a complete idiot I just slap it on my wrist. My other housemate saw me trapped and began to go in panic mode, and I was apparently tightening the cuff grip even harder. I was on the floor holding my alarming red arm up, moaning. First we tried to pick the lock like in the movies, but of course we have had no idea how to do it, so we took turns watching YouTube tutorials while the other would just kind of inspect the messy floor. I was packing after all, looking for a different object that I would insert in the cuff and wiggle around in the hope that the lock would somehow magically click open. Then we had to call an emergency locksmith who assured us he'd be there in 30 minutes. The locksmith entered and after 5 minutes left, saying that he didn't have the key for it. I'll have to Google what locksmith really do. As our third option we called the police, who in turn called the fire department. Next thing, 5 firemen in suspenders are in our living room, 2 of them with huge pliers, all of them surrounding me. The firemen decide they can't do anything without hurting me, so they call the cops. The cops come and try, their universal key doesn't work. So the cop calls the ER. The ER tells him they can't do anything, but maybe that they should call the firemen. Meanwhile I stood there stunned at how unprepared we are as society for these kinds of situation. I mean, aren't those the guys supposed to pry you out of a car if you're in a car wreck? Anyway, back to point A, dying of pain, I eventually just lets the firemen hurt me with the pryers. Of course, they try and free me. So the strongest fireman, with a mean-ass tattoo on his arm, just starts going full force on this cuff, and man, that thing barely moves. We're talking about the pryers they use to open up crashed cars. This brand gives you good stuff for your money. Anyway, they go and get a different pryer, and the firemen begin to make slow progress. Meanwhile, this sort of cocky, short cop with a clear Napoleon complex stands up behind them, looking like a kid who's being excluded from a friend circle. While the firemen are concentrating, the short cop keeps standing on his toes to peep at the action, and then landing back on his heels with a short comment or note on what the firemen should do to make it better. And he kept going like that for a while. Looked like a little bald grasshopper. Eventually the cuffs broke, I was freed, and the ambulances and fire truck parked on the street with their full sirens on left. Wish I could have told my puzzled neighbors what had just happened. TLDR, I got stuck in handcuffs and nobody could really help me. This wasn't exactly intended to be malicious at the time, although it was definitely a compliance that backfired, literally. This is a story that my mom told me from when she was growing up. Backstory. My mom was adopted when she was born and was raised on the west coast of the U.S. Her family had an animal farm and her normal chores included taking care of the animals and cleaning the house. I say this because it was never her job to cook. Her mom did that. My mom didn't learn how to cook until she was a lot older, although she still struggles with making chicken. This takes place when she was maybe 12 or so. Story. My grandma, Mom's adopted mom, was a smoker and ended up getting lung cancer. At one point she had a surgery and was on bed rest, in this case couch rest. Because of this, my mom was put in charge of the cooking. My grandma would lay on the couch and shout the instructions to my mom. One day my mom was making a cake and my grandma said to butter the bottom of the pan. My mom goes where grandma could see and points at the outer bottom of the pan and asks, "Here?" Grandma doesn't even look up and says yes. My mom goes into the kitchen, butters the bottom of the pan and follows the rest of grandma's instructions. She then goes to put it in the oven. A short while later and there is smoke coming out of the oven. My grandma freaks out and yells for mom to take it out. She doesn't. Grandma finally looks up and sees that the bottom of the pan is burned. It is now that it clicks exactly where she put the butter. She was mad at first that my mom was that dumb, but my mom said that she pointed and grandma had confirmed that that is where she was supposed to butter it. My grandma then learned that she had to be way more specific when my mom was cooking. So during the quarantine I thought that I should try some new hobby since I'm getting bored. I've read about a lot of people starting to make their own sourdough bread and it sounded awesome. For those of you that don't know how to make sourdough, you make a starter that you feed for 4 days and then bake. I live in a fairly small apartment, so I put the plastic bowl with saran wrap in a closed, warm place since it has to be in room temperature or higher during these 4 days. Now to the tofu. I got off work a little bit early and after a hard week I was going to make a nice dinner, potato croquettes with hummus and marinated tofu. First thing to do, preheat the oven. Which is where I put the plastic bowl with the starter. Now my place smells like burnt plastic and burnt bread. Guess it's pizza time. TLDR, put a plastic bowl with sourdough starter in the oven for storing and preheated the oven. Oven is full PF melted plastic and I'm ordering pizza. Just a small story about that one neckbeard I met at a convention many years ago. I was about 14 years old and it was my first time cosplaying. I went to the convention as Mia Fey from Phoenix Wright, and yes, that character showed some cleavage but in an elegant way, which neither me nor my mom, who was with me the whole time, saw as too suggestive. People asked for pictures as they do, and I wasn't thinking anything bad when the typical neckbeard appeared, minus the fedora if I remember correctly. He was about 30 to 35 years old. He asked for a pic with me, I agreed and my mom took the photo. He put his arm around my shoulder but nothing more. But then, when he thanked me, he asked if I was insert name here from insert anime here. I did not know who that was and explained who I cosplayed as. He then explained that it was a character from a hentai he liked. Who actually remembers names of characters in hentai? I laughed nervously, made advances to leave, but he leaned in to ask me if I'd cosplay as his hentai girl for him, maybe do some poses. He even told me how warm he felt. I laughed again and left quickly. Luckily, he did not come after me. I truly believe that he knew that I wasn't 18 plus. Looking back at my cosplay pics, I'd say I looked 15 to 16 max. My mom didn't hear anything of the conversation and I did not tell her. And #X200B. So, does any one of you know what character he was talking about? Or do you think he was just trying to get me to a dirty topic? I work at a small-town coffee shop that has managed to adapt and stay busy during COVID-19 by utilizing a window for walk-up service. A regular problematic customer, let's call him TJ, is a typical middle-aged man riddled with toxic masculinity. He often makes female employees and customers uncomfortable with his comments. Lately he's been around a lot, being typical TJ. Today he came to our window and ordered a coffee. Cool, nothing out of the ordinary. A co-worker asked him if he would like to tip via our Square register. We normally don't verbally ask customers, but with the current pandemic we are not allowing customers to touch our iPad system. He proceeded to tell her to put 100, and reassured them he wanted to tip that much because he appreciates our hard work and effort and wants to chip in since our business has been a bit slower. Okay, I gave him that and almost have a change of heart about TJ. We both outwardly thank him and he goes on his way. I text my boss about this uncharacteristic interaction with TJ, and through their end of the register system she was able to look at the transaction. They noticed that not only was the credit card he used not in his name, but in his boss's name, on their company card. Typical TJ. What a D-bag. Hi all. I recently posted on this sub about a possible scenario of plagiarism to a YouTube channel. First of all, thank you for the support. I was also sad to hear that this has happened to so many of you. I have reached out to the owner of the channel and this has been resolved. She has added my post to the video, and we've agreed it's likely due to the lack of sources on this case. I've deleted my other post, since unfortunately it was leading to brigading of the YouTube channel, which was not my intention. If this has happened to you, I've learned that it might be best to reach out to author first and try to resolve that way. Mods, I know this is probably not on topic, but apparently it is an issue in the community and seems to happen to people often, so I hope this doesn't get taken down. See my original write-up below. First time posting, currently a EMS dispatcher for a private ambulance company for 3 years now. We take some calls, however, they're usually seizures, psych, and falls. This one? Probably should have been psych, but unfortunately she wasn't the patient. This call happened in my first year, while I was pretty fresh and didn't understand the power of controlling a call. And #X200B. Me, okay. Tell me exactly what happened. CLR, yeah, my mom fell in the other room, you know we have her locked in there right now, but yeah she fell and I think she may have hit her head. Me, okay, are you with her now? CLR, well, you see, she has dementia, and we live in a new home, so she is locked in there. You see, we can't have her wandering because of the bears that are around here. Me, have you gone to check on her yet? CLR, no. I can't unlock her door because she will get out and the bears will get her. Me, can you please go check on the patient? CLR, yeah, I think she might have hit her head, it sounded like she hit the end table, that's what woke me up, but even our big dog, insert large dog brand, is afraid to go outside because there are bears here at this new house. Please send the ambulance but make sure they get in and out quick because the bears will get them. Rinse and repeat for literally every one of the 10 questions involved with a fall. I was essentially working with a third-party caller as she flat out refused to unlock her mother from the room until the imps got there, let alone even go look at her. And #X200B. I kid you not, I heard way more about these bears, than I ever got out of her regarding her fallen mother. While I may have wanted to bash my head into the desk repeatedly asking her the questions, now I can have a good belly laugh over it. From what I do remember though, Mom was transported alright, and no EMTs were mauled by the darn bears. I am a 24-year-old male and look at. A little backstory about myself. I have worked as a waiter for 6 years and my last job specialized with some really good selections of whiskey. So it got me on a path of getting into whiskey. I was a Specs liquor store trying to pick something out and for myself. I had just gotten off of work at my new job as a software developer and so was dressed a bit nicer than I would usually for just going out. I am looking around and see a guy looking through trying to pick something in the whiskey section. I got a feeling like he needed some help. So I kindly walked by and told him my knowledge and opinion on the bourbon he was looking at. He told me that he just started to drink whiskey at his buddy's and that he wanted a good one to start off with. I gave him a few suggestions of what different ones I felt were the best bang for the buck. I told him that I felt it waste of money for him to spend $60 on a whiskey at this point. Partially because if he did not like it he would have wasted more money than he needed. Also, I do not feel people starting out should get the most expensive whiskeys if they cannot really taste the difference between the one that is $60 and one that is $30. I then told him if he wants to try more expensive stuff find a good whiskey bar and just talk to the bartenders and they will help him. He thanks me and asks if I can tell him what the most sold whiskey is here. I laugh and said I don't work here, I just really like whiskey and want others to enjoy it as well. He was surprised at my knowledge and wanted to know where I learned so much and why I helped him. I gave him my background and told him I wanted his experience to start off good so he could continue enjoying whiskey. We laugh, shake hands and part ways. And #X200B. I know this might not be what people are used to but I thought some positive news and a good story to put a smile on everyone's face is needed during this time. Thanks for reading. And #X200B. TL Doctor, helped a guy with learning on the basics of bourbon. I thought I worked there and asked why I helped him if I didn't. I just wanted to help a fellow whiskey lover. This was a few years ago, but still makes me laugh. I used to work with my dad repairing appliances. My dad was the repairman, and I was basically just his assistant. So I got the grunt jobs, carry the toolbox, move the fridge, and in this case turn off the breakers. We were fixing a built-in dishwasher with some electrical issues. So I had to turn off the power to the machine. Most dishwashers are hardwired into the house's power, so you need to turn off the breaker. I asked the customer where the breaker box was, and she told me it was in the basement just above the couch. I obviously have never been to this house before, so when I got down to the basement I looked around, and couldn't see anything in the dark. I felt around for a light switch, but couldn't find that either. Luckily I had my flashlight on me, so I pulled it out, and looked around. After a minute of two I found the couch. It looked to be part of some sort of a rec room with a TV and a couple of chairs too. I saw some blankets on the couch, but didn't think too much of it. I found the breaker box, leaned over top of the couch, and started to search for the one labeled dishwasher. I found it, and flicked it off. Anyone who hasn't done this might not know, but it makes an audible, and loud click when you do so. It was at this point I heard an audible whimper from right below me. I aimed my flashlight down, and realized there was a mass moving under the blankets. It took me a second to realize, but I was actually leaning over top of someone. I quickly stepped back, and apologized. I believe I said sorry. Dishwasher. She quickly sat up, and that's when I saw her. She was probably about 20-ish or so, honestly not bad looking, holding the blanket up to her neck, looking terrified. I stood there for a second before she quickly jumped up and ran past me to the bathroom on the other side of the room. As she ran past I caught a glimpse of her, and I could tell she was not wearing anything except for the blanket. I double-checked that I had turned the breaker off, and I went back upstairs. My dad asked what had taken me so long, and I told him. He laughed a bit, and we continued to do our job. After a few minutes I heard the girl go up from the basement to the second floor, and I could hear her talking with her mother, but not what they were saying. My dad and I finished our job, and called the mother to let her know. Both her and the daughter, now dressed, came downstairs. I apologized to her if I had scared her. She told me that her mom didn't know she was sleeping down there, and I had woken her up. All she saw was someone searching around her basement with a flashlight, looking for the switch, then come right towards her. She pulled the blanket over her head when she heard a click, the breaker, and thought it was a gun. We had a laugh, and luckily no cops were called. DL, Doctor, was looking for a breaker box, and a girl thought I was a burglar. I work for a major restaurant chain and I'm actually impressed with them. They're refusing to reopen restaurants until 2 to 3 weeks after states' restrictions have been lifted. They won't reopen for 25% capacity, understandably so, and are waiting for safe reopening at 50% capacity. Which per my GM, means our restaurant won't open till about July as our lockdown orders are extended now into June. While I'm going stir crazy and completely feel for my coworkers who have still been doing curbside, I'm just glad my company isn't rushing to throw us into the thick of it for profits. First time posting. Hopefully this counts as petty. So me and my family have been quarantined just as everyone else. But with it being Mother's Day last week we decided to bring my grandma some food. She's been mostly alone these days because of the virus. So we figured why not. So we ordered online and went and picked it up. My dad went in to get it. These days there are a lot of independent delivery service out and today was no exception, but one guy decided to park right next to us in an empty wheelchair spot. Unlike him. We had a placard. So my dad get back before he did, otherwise my mom would have said some. So we tell dad, and being who he is, he went right up to the manager and told her, "Hi, food's fine, don't worry about that, but there's a delivery guy in the wheelchair spot. If it happens again we're gonna have a problem." The manager agreed. And one of the 3 drivers stand there at the time sheepishly went out and moved his car. I know it's not crazy, but it's really the only story I got. Being disabled myself, it gets annoying, so it's nice to get a small amount of payback. It's more of a food service job, but oh well, still relevant. Okay, so I had a job for this restaurant in town as a waitress. I personally loved the job. It was a nice-sized restaurant, not too big, not too small. Also it was in my hometown that doesn't have an abundance of Karens. About 2 years into the job my aunt died from cancer and I went to her funeral. I gave my boss the whole rundown of what happening with 3 days notice. I got a call halfway through the service and I didn't check who it was because I was sobbing because my aunt was a great person and I miss her. Turns out it was my boss who called me to show into work after I told her that I was really messed up about losing my aunt and I'd be going to the service, so she can't call me to come in. The next day I walk into work and she fires me for not showing up and not answering the call and being disrespectful and insubordinate for not showing up. All I have to say is "Fire you, Janet." The strangest part is Janet was actually pretty nice the most of the time I was there. She would obviously have her days. Still, either way, F you, Janet. TLDR, I told my boss not to call me because I was at a funeral with 3 days notice. She did. I ignored it. She fired me the next day for not answering. I'm living in a state that will be allowing restaurants to open soon, with restrictions. No idea what exactly the restrictions will be. Currently I'm on unemployment and making more than I did while working. I'm anticipating a significant drop in tables and tips, and while I can weather a certain amount of that, there is definitely a limit and it won't be sustainable long term. I'm starting to make a game plan for getting another job in case serving no longer becomes worthwhile for me. I'm not making any decisions yet and plan on talking to my manager, but I'm feeling very anxious about it all, especially about the uncertainty. I really enjoyed my job all things considered, and the money was really good. It makes me sad because I finally feel like I was at a job I was good at, working with people I actually liked, for the most part, and now I don't know if I can afford to keep it. I feel guilty abandoning my crew, but at the same time I have to be able to support myself. Anyone else feeling similarly? I'm a manager for a big chain and honestly, I don't know if I'll go back. I've been fed up with the late nights, weekends and holidays since I was promoted. I really don't want to go back to that life. I also am worried about corporate making us do some ridiculous policies we just aren't qualified for. Rumors about temperature checks, not letting people in who have a cough, etc. I hate the guests. I'm fed up with their stupid questions and bogus complaints. The only problem is the theater is my only work experience and I don't have a college degree, so I have literally nothing to fall back on, which sucks. Do you think you'll go back? Managers, supervisors, crew? Why or why not? Hope you're all staying safe out there. As you might have guessed by the title, this story involves a smoking fee. It was a pretty straightforward charge. Na smelled it in the hall the night before, housekeeping smelled it when she went in the room the next morning, and GM found a paper cup with some ashes in it in the garbage. GM had trouble charging the full $250 smoking fee because the card kept declining, but she managed to get $75 out of it. A small moral victory. Yesterday, a week or two after this, I get a call from the guest with the typical righteous indignation. After confronting her with the notes, I expected the usual deny, but instead I get a weird defense. Enter scene. Annoying guest, I shouldn't be charged 75, I only smoked half of a cigarette before I remembered it was non-smoking and I put it out. Me, so you admit that you smoked in the room? AG, it was only half a cigarette, there's no way anyone smelled it. Me, well I guess that's appropriate, because we only charged you about 1/3 of the smoking fee. AG, what's your manager's name? I want to talk to her. Give name and time to call back, and unseen. Between the pictures of the ashes, eyewitnesses to the room smelling like smoke, the signed reg. card, and a verbal admission of guilt, if she decides to do a chargeback this will be the easiest win on our part ever. Bartender at a local pizza joint. My buddy came in after a long day dealing with his 2 sick little girls. He tells me a story from today about the littlest. She's screaming for him from the bathroom. She states she's been waiting for 60 years for him. All she wanted was a cheese pizza from our place. Since they were sick he went with something more appropriate for upset stomachs. But you can guarantee I got him a gift certificate for a cheese pizza for her when she's better. Nice to have good customers to even out the bad ones lol. I worked in housekeeping in a hotel for months up until this past week. I'm now 35 weeks pregnant. I was scheduled to work 5+ days a week, with 20+ rooms to myself. I came into work recently, because I was on the schedule, and I could barely walk. I couldn't bend my back and my ankles were hugely swollen. I had been in L&D the night before to stop contractions. We didn't have many rooms, but 5 housekeepers in-house. Everyone was almost begging my manager to send me home, as we had too many housekeepers for the amount of rooms. Now, I'm huge at this point in pregnancy. I can't bend too far forward in general. My manager and I, discussed a couple weeks ago that she didn't want me cleaning bathtubs, so I was to have another housekeeper come clean my bathtubs. No biggie, I was fine with that. Well, the day before I quit I had went to find another HK to help with a bathtub. Said manager stopped us in the hall and asked what we were doing socializing on the clock. We explained that she was going to clean a bathtub for me and would go right back to her rooms. She yelled at me and said that if I can't do my job, I need to quit so that she can hire someone who's willing to work. I explained that it wasn't that I wasn't willing to work, rather that's one small task that I myself struggle with accomplishing. She didn't care. She continued yelling at me. Now, I've always hated being yelled at, so I spent the rest of my shift crying while cleaning my rooms. I got home from work, still crying. My boyfriend became extremely upset as I told him what had happened. We decided that it's in the best interest of our child that I just be done, as it's a lot of emotional trouble as well as physical. So I gave my manager her wish, and I went in and handed in my scrubs and quit. She seemed sympathetic, said she understood, was sad to see me go, and for me to come talk to her after I was released from maternity leave. Fast forward to today, another HK at said hotel was talking to this manager, while recording the conversation to send to me. She asked if I would be back after baby. The manager told her that I was lazy and a crybaby so she would never consider hiring me back. I'm glad I quit. I feel like I dodged a bullet. I'm not sure that I'll ever be able to convince myself to work in housekeeping again. As you might have guessed by the title, this story involves a smoking fee. It was a pretty straightforward charge. Na smelled it in the hall the night before, housekeeping smelled it when she went in the room the next morning, and GM found a paper cup with some ashes in it in the garbage. GM had trouble charging the full $250 smoking fee because the card kept declining, but she managed to get $75 out of it. A small moral victory. Yesterday, a week or two after this, I get a call from the guest with the typical righteous indignation. After confronting her with the notes I expected the usual deny but instead I get a weird defense. Enter scene. Annoying guest, I shouldn't be charged 75, I only smoked half of a cigarette before I remembered it was non-smoking and I put it out. Me, so you admit that you smoked in the room? AG, it was only half a cigarette, there's no way anyone smelled it. Me, well I guess that's appropriate, because we only charged you about 1/3 of the smoking fee. AG, what's your manager's name? I want to talk to her. Give name and time to call back, and unseen. Between the pictures of the ashes, eyewitnesses to the room smelling like smoke, the signed reg. card, and a verbal admission of guilt, if she decides to do a chargeback this will be the easiest win on our part ever. It's more of a food service job but oh well still relevant. Okay, so I had a job for this restaurant in town as a waitress. I personally loved the job. It was a nice sized restaurant, not too big not too small, Also, it was in my hometown that doesn't have an abundance of Karens. About 2 years into the job, my aunt died from cancer and I went to her funeral. I gave my boss the whole rundown of what happening with 3 days notice. I got a call halfway through the service and I didn't check who it was because I was sobbing because my aunt was a great person and I miss her. Turns out it was my boss who called me to show into work after I told her that I was really messed up about losing my aunt and I'd be going to the service so she can't call me to come in. The next day I walk into work and she fires me for not showing up and not answering the call and being disrespectful and insubordinate for not showing up. All I have to say is "Fire you, Janet." The strangest part is Janet was actually pretty nice the most of the time I was there. She would obviously have her days. Still, either way, F you, Janet. TLDR, I told my boss not to call me because I was at a funeral with 3 days notice. She did, I ignored it. She fired me the next day for not answering. I'm living in a state that will be allowing restaurants to open soon, with restrictions. No idea what exactly the restrictions will be. Currently I'm on unemployment and making more than I did while working. I'm anticipating a significant drop in tables and tips, and while I can weather a certain amount of that, there is definitely a limit and it won't be sustainable long term. I'm starting to make a game plan for getting another job in case serving no longer becomes worthwhile for me. I'm not making any decisions yet and plan on talking to my manager, but I'm feeling very anxious about it all, especially about the uncertainty. I really enjoyed my job all things considered, and the money was really good. It makes me sad because I finally feel like I was at a job I was good at, working with people I actually liked, for the most part, and now I don't know if I can afford to keep it. I feel guilty abandoning my crew, but at the same time I have to be able to support myself. Anyone else feeling similarly? I'm a manager for a big chain and honestly, I don't know if I'll go back. I've been fed up with the late nights, weekends and holidays since I was promoted. I really don't want to go back to that life. I also am worried about corporate making us do some ridiculous policies we just aren't qualified for. Rumors about temperature checks, not letting people in who have a cough, etc. I hate the guests. I'm fed up with their stupid questions and bogus complaints. The only problem is the theater is my only work experience and I don't have a college degree, so I have literally nothing to fall back on, which sucks. Do you think you'll go back? Managers, supervisors, crew? Why or why not? Hope you're all staying safe out there. So this happened today and my so is still laughing about it. In order to set the scene, I need to explain our home layout. Our house is now next to an apartment complex. When I walk down my driveway, I walk past 12 individual patios that are all behind a fence. Today I was in my kiddo's room that is on the same side of the house. Right outside of his window we built a new box garden. All of the neighborhood cats would like to use it as a litter box, so we try to close it off. I pulled the top off so I could add a few more plants to the garden and haven't had a chance to close it back up. I was in my kiddo's room and heard some noises outside and yelled, "Get out of my garden." I look up and see that my neighbor was out in his patio cleaning up. Instantly mortified, I yell, "Sorry about that. I thought you were a cat." They didn't respond. Great way to start the day. It was like a scene out of an awkward comedy. My kiddo and I had a good laugh. TLDR, thought my neighbor was a cat in my garden. Yelled loudly, "Get out of my garden." Bartender at a local pizza joint. My buddy came in after a long day dealing with his 2 sick little girls. He tells me a story from today about the littlest. She's screaming for him from the bathroom. She states she's been waiting for 60 years for him. All she wanted was a cheese pizza from our place. Since they were sick, he went with something more appropriate for upset stomachs. But you can guarantee I got him a gift certificate for a cheese pizza for her when she's better. Nice to have good customers to even out the bad ones, lol. I worked in housekeeping in a hotel for months up until this past week. I'm now 35 weeks pregnant. I was scheduled to work 5+ days a week, with 20+ rooms to myself. I came into work recently, because I was on the schedule, and I could barely walk. I couldn't bend my back and my ankles were hugely swollen. I had been in L&D the night before to stop contractions. We didn't have many rooms, but 5 housekeepers in-house. Everyone was almost begging my manager to send me home, as we had too many housekeepers for the amount of rooms. Now, I'm huge at this point in pregnancy. I can't bend too far forward in general. My manager and I, discussed a couple weeks ago that she didn't want me cleaning bathtubs, so I was to have another housekeeper come clean my bathtubs. No biggie, I was fine with that. Well, the day before I quit I had went to find another HK to help with a bathtub. Said manager stopped us in the hall and asked what we were doing socializing on the clock. We explained that she was going to clean a bathtub for me and would go right back to her rooms. She yelled at me and said that if I can't do my job, I need to quit so that she can hire someone who's willing to work. I explained that it wasn't that I wasn't willing to work, rather that's one small task that I myself struggle with accomplishing. She didn't care. She continued yelling at me. Now, I've always hated being yelled at, so I spent the rest of my shift crying while cleaning my rooms. I got home from work, still crying. My boyfriend became extremely upset as I told him what had happened. We decided that it's in the best interest of our child that I just be done, as it's a lot of emotional trouble as well as physical. So I gave my manager her wish, and I went in and handed in my scrubs and quit. She seemed sympathetic, said she understood, was sad to see me go, and for me to come talk to her after I was released from maternity leave. Fast forward to today, another HK at said hotel was talking to this manager, while recording the conversation to send to me. She asked if I would be back after baby. The manager told her that I was lazy and a crybaby so she would never consider hiring me back. I'm glad I quit. I feel like I dodged a bullet. I'm not sure that I'll ever be able to convince myself to work in housekeeping again. I worked at a very large, very popular tech store in a very busy location in London. This happened about 10 years ago. I worked in visual merchandising, so rarely had any communication with customers as I was busy making sure everything in the store was beautiful and functioning perfectly. This time there was no one else available, so my colleague politely came up to me and asked if I could do a warranty replacement. This always about 8:45 p.m. so we were just about to close and I did most of my work after closure. I said it was fine, so I approached the customer and asked for his receipt. It was just over a year old, so I had to ask my manager permission. He rolled his eye at this, but we pride ourselves on customer service and going above and beyond, so I ignore this. I get permission from my manager and proceed to process the replacement. We have to process replacements in the same fashion the customer gave it to us, so the same packaging etc. This particular customer only had the inner packaging for his headphones, and not the outer. The outer being literally a box of plastic with a ring so you can hang it on the shelf. So I've processed the replacement and handed it back to him. He looks up at me and says, "You're AFB." So said, "Excuse me?" He said, "You're only not giving me all the packing because I didn't give you all the packing." Technically true. So I try to say this is policy procedure, we have to send warranty items back to the warehouse as they're produced, but he's shouting over me, "Now you're a foxy, you're a foxy. Sir, if you continue to speak to me this way I will refuse to serve you," but the abuse continues. I'm literally shaking at this point, more out of his sheer audacity, so I just walk away. Had this really fit manager at the time? I'm not entirely sure the conversation as I went out the back cause I didn't want to be around him, but I know he threw him out the store and told him he couldn't come back. My knight in shining armor. I was just astounded that someone could talk to someone that way. I've got plenty more stories from my years there, most of them are lovely, but this one shook me to my core. Hi all. I work as a head of department in a school in Germany, and a few weeks ago we were asked if and how many medical masks we need for the reopening. I thought we probably get a pack or so if I order 10,000 masks and get 10% I am good for the rest of the term. Outstaff is about 70 teachers and we have like 7 weeks left till the summer holidays. Guess what I got delivered today and whose office is full with boxes up to the ceiling? Now as I am writing this I am just remembering, it's the second time this happened to me. Many years ago I was in PFC in the German army and doing staff duty, and we needed a special form that I had to order. I mixed up that if I order 100, it weren't 100 forms but 100 boxes with 1,000 forms or so each. My CO was not very happy, to put it mildly. Should have learned from it. TL, doctor ordered more medical mask than I needed, thought I would get only a fraction, got all. I am 14. I am a certified referee in my state. I know the rules as I've played by them my whole life along with taking the officiating classes. At our park district, no headers for ages below 11. But in U12, it is up to the referee's discretion. So if it's a small tap it's okay. That is exactly what happens. So the coach behind me screams at the top of his lungs there are no headers in U12 5 to 16 times. I ignore him. Though I could eject him. It was last game of the season and I didn't care. After a bit of yelling, he says fine, go duck yourself then, which I turn and tell at him for saying in front of U11 kids. I wish I sent him away or ended the match. Sadly I didn't do much and my partner is a long-time referee, officiated my matches as I grew up, and he is deaf. So he has no idea what happened. The person who runs Park District in my area has been informed and is taking action. Tifu. Every morning I take a handful on my vitamins/other medicines that are stored in an AM/PM pill organizer. Among the pills is a chewable vitamin, a couple of other medications and fish oil. I usually just swallow everything and chew on the flavorful vitamin. A few minutes ago, while still waking up with my morning quarantine grogginess, I took my AM handful of pills. While the 5 different meds/vitamins were in my mouth, I felt the vitamin on my tongue and decided to chew on it before swallowing the whole lot. As I bit down on the flavorful bliss, juices started to pour out. Issue is, my chewable gummy has no liquids. Then came the taste of fish. Gross. I now have the bad case of coffee tuna breathe. Luckily I'm in isolation and only my wife has to bear with it. Tongue. TLDR, bite into my fish oil capsule and now have tuna breathe. Before you say there's no way to get revenge on someone like that, it's just too hard to track them down, keep reading. A few nights ago I was alerted about some suspicious activity on my card. It turns out some lady found out my password for Zulily.com, and bought $600 worth of the same Vineyard Vines polo shirt, probably to resell. I was able to cancel most of them, but one of the orders shipped, so although I don't have to pay for it, thanks to the credit card company, this idiot still gets a bunch of polos for free. Now comes the best part. Zulily refused to contact the authorities in any way, but because this moron idiot lady who stole my info ordered stuff to her house, I have her information. I looked her address up on Google Earth, saw her house, looked her up on Zillow, and even visited her Facebook page. I have all of this information on her, but because the company refuses to call their local police, I'm just sitting on it with no way to use it against her, anonymously. Is there anything good I can do? I don't handle technical stuff at all. I had another customer carrying on about how they are so great with technology and then start using terms like nodes, subnodes, sectors, etc. I'd clol. I go a few times back and forth explaining sorry to hear if there is any kind of issue, please let us connect you to tech support. They don't want technical. Because they are a genius that figured out the problem with transmitter on subnode 7xg or whatever they are on about. Eye roll of the century. Transferred to technical. Looked them up and it was one of the 5 people that invented Wi-Fi, skull. Not into him, neither is the other roommate. We both want him to move and to replace him with a new roommate, aka he's dirty and doesn't do anything with his life and every time his room door is open wafts in this toxic smell that even guests find disgusting. We never speak or anything and he never wanted to get to know each other through the couples times we reached out to him, so we won't be missing each other. His name is on the lease though. So, how do I kindly tell him, a month before the lease is up, that we'd like to renew the lease without him? This is all in New York State. I worked with this manager, in a tiny kitchen, last Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Yesterday Alpho staff got a group text that she has tested positive and we should all monitor ourselves for symptoms. She worked every day so there's literally nobody who wasn't exposed to her. I texted the other phone manager my concerns about the entire staff now having been exposed, and she said we were fine to keep working until we show symptoms. Our kitchen is so small I really doubt that the virus wasn't spread to anyone else over the course of the week. But then again, everyone has now been exposed. So our only option besides continuing to go to work and serve customers would be to close the restaurant. I'm scheduled to go in 2 hours, I work all weekend again. I'm feeling really nervous. Can some of you guys give me your opinion on the situation? It makes me nervous knowing that I, and every other co-worker, could potentially be positive for COVID and spreading it to all of our customers. Thoughts? Or some strategies to stay calm and sane? Smile? Not me, but witnessed my bar manager go through this. Customer, excuse me, I've been waiting ages and you served everyone except me. Bar manager, I'm sorry love, what do you want? C, I'm not your love. Stares. BM, I'm sorry, can I get you anything? C, I think it's awful how you ignore customers who have been waiting for so long. BM, I didn't realize you had been waiting so long, what can I get you? C, well, I think this is awful, 5 people must have come after me and been served. BM, I apologize again, I'll get you your drinks now, what would you like? C, for free? BM, sorry, I can't do them for free. C, why not? I've had to wait for so long, it's the least you can do. BM, I don't think it works like that, do you want any drinks or not? C, of course I do, why do you think I was waiting at the bar? But I don't think I should have to pay. BM, you can either buy a drink or stand away from the bar, I'm afraid, That's all we can offer. C. Fine. But I don't want you to serve me. BM. Why not? C. Because you're incompetent, you don't know what you're doing. BM. Well, everyone else here didn't serve you fast enough either, what difference does it make who pours your drinks? C. Well, I've just said, anyone but you. Now get somebody else. BM. Well, the other staff are busy mixing drinks, so you'll have to wait if you want them. C. Are you kidding? Flip you. BM. Flip me? I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Commence ranting and shouting, followed by the bouncer escorting her out. Hi. Just wanna say, love all your work and greatly appreciate what y'all do. 20. Random question though, which I reckon is a bit of a gray area, but I get looks every time I do it for my partner. What is y'all's stance on guests taking all the random amenities? Not like the hair dryer or anything, but like the coffee/hot chocolate/shampoo and conditioner? My mom always told me, hey, you technically paid for this, but when I did it in front of my boyfriend he looked horrified and accused me of stealing the hotel's coffee/soap/whatever. As I say, nothing that is like utensils, just what you'd use while staying, haha. How do you guys feel on the matter? I work for a grocery store on the customer service desk. Got a call from a lady who wanted to return beef because it didn't taste fresh. Told her due to health concerns we are not accepting returns at this time. Kept talking, pretty much repeated herself, and so I just said we are not accepting returns at this time. Had to repeat it a third time. She asked for my name, so I told her because I know if she complained to my boss she'd go straight from no returns to no. This shouldn't be a difficult concept to understand. Before I start, this isn't a pity me story, I'm fine. I want to share this because it was ridiculous. I'd met this guy, let's call him DG for delusional guy. I was 16 at the time, he seemed alright, and back then I didn't see the red flags as red flags. So naturally when he started opening up to me about his abusive ex-girlfriends and how he was such a nice guy and they took advantage of it, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Boy, was I wrong. Fast forward to a year later, DG asks me out and I say yes. Over the course of 2 years, he started creating problems where there weren't any, all the time. He was always the poor victim, I was always wrong. Eventually it got to a point where he'd get mad for anything that didn't involve paying attention to him exclusively. Including sleeping. Always twisting it to make it look like it was the worst crime ever committed. He'd compare me a lot with his ex, let's call her Girl. Girl had supposedly tried to contact him again, but he didn't want anything to do with her because she was toxic and she cheated on him. Here's an example of him getting mad at me for problems he created himself. Once he sent me a random nude and I didn't want to anger him, so I reacted positively. And it became all about how he was a nice guy and I was treating him like a sex object. Few weeks later he sent me another nude, and since I didn't want to make him feel like a sex object I stayed neutral about it. And of course I was still a monster because I was making him feel unattractive and insecure. There was just no winning with him. I found a job in a fast food restaurant a couple years ago and I broke up with him shortly after since I was seeing normal humans again, and of course I could suddenly see the entire relationship was far from normal. Not only that, but I found out Girl hadn't cheated on DG. He had cheated on her. She dumped him and he tried to get her back throughout our entire relationship. So much for not wanting to do anything with her, and she's trying so hard to contact me. He was also actively cheating on me with another girl. After I dumped him, he begged me to give him a chance, but I said no. So he sent me a million texts whining about how he was such a nice guy again and he still cared even after how I treated him and I was a piece of shit. I just blocked him and refused to see him, so he started sending his friends. He is still in complete denial, and by now I'm probably another evil toxic ex who broke his heart in his feel-bad stories for his next girl. So since COVID-19 shutdowns have started, I've been taking care of my grandma as a fill-in for her home health aide. I have to travel almost 2 hours on public transportation, 65-minute train. So as the day is wrapping up, we're having her favorite drink, a large iced coffee, and I lose track of time and have to rush out to catch my train or risk waiting almost 2 hours for the next one. I arrive at the station with about 6 minutes left to board, take my seat and wait for the conductor to collect the tickets so I can use the restroom. 10 minutes go by and he finally comes around to me and I ask which direction is the bathroom, and of course it's out of order. So I try to distract myself for 65 minutes, but every little bump feels like my bladder is about to pop. As we approach my station I order an Uber ahead of time since drivers aren't out as much. It's about 70 degrees out and slowly approaching 2 hours of my full bladder and I'm sweating bullets when my driver arrives. More bumpy roads feel like punches to my bladder, and when we arrive on my street the urge to let go comes over me and I can feel my underwear slowly becoming less dry. I ask him to pull around into the driveway because my bathroom is located right next to my back door. I barely make it out of his car while I'm a hunched over knees together sweaty mess. My landlord is on the back porch. He lives upstairs, grilling, says hello and tries to make small talk, but I don't even acknowledge him because I've become a character of The Walking Dead. I'm hot, tired and trying not to think about anything because I can feel it trickling down my leg with my light blue jeans on. I have one more step before I'm in the hallway and his kids come running out the door onto the porch, almost knocking me over right along with the extremely friendly husky who I haven't seen in a few days. He jumps up to greet me while gently knocking his paw into my stomach, and I lost all control at that point. I put my head down, screamed flip, and get the greatest feeling I've had all day. It lasted about 30 seconds as my pants were turning dark blue. While trying to get to my door I burst into tears with sweat pouring down my face. I hear my landlord say, "Get the hose." I get in and scream for my BF. He comes running and looks horrified at what is standing in front of him. Before he can ask what happened I just point to the porch. He cleaned the porch and back hallway for me, and about 2 hours later my landlord gave us some burgers because I had a difficult trip. TLDR, having to use the bathroom for over 2 hours, then I get hit in the gut by a dog and pee on the porch in front of landlord and his family.